The last time I drove up the gravel road to my river house, the porch light my wife had loved so much wasn't there. Neither was the porch. Neither was the house. In its place stood a shiny two-story building strung with fairy lights and a cheap vinyl banner that fluttered in the river breeze. Riverfront Retreat, Grand Opening. Mini Hotel on the Water SUVs were lined up where my lilac bushes used to be. Strangers in flip-flops dragged roller bags across the crushed remains of my wife's rose garden. Music thumped from somewhere inside, muffled by glass and laughter. My daughter, Maggie, stood under the banner in a bright red blazer and high heels that sank into my ruined lawn, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. She had no idea what this day was going to cost her. Only a month earlier, the world had been simple. The sound of the river, a cup of coffee, a blanket, and the anticipation of sunrise. That's how my wife and I spent every morning in our country house, a big two-story place nestled between the river and the forest. We moved there as soon as we decided to retire and quietly live out our old age. Then life did what life does. It ended before we were ready. Mary's heart gave out in early autumn on a morning that started like any other. For weeks afterward, I still set out 2 mugs by habit, still turned to say, "Look at that light, hun," to the empty chair beside me. I am 72 years old. My name is Jim Harris. Until this story, I thought I had already lived through the worst pain a man could endure. Then came my daughter and her sign. It was late May when Maggie pulled up the gravel driveway in her brand new convertible, the engine too loud for a road that had only ever known pickup trucks and the quiet hum of my old sedan. The car still had temporary plates. Even from the porch I could see the dealer's sticker in the window, numbers that made my stomach tighten. Bought on credit, no doubt. My Maggie loved everything new and expensive, especially when someone else paid for it. "Hi, Daddy," she called, waving with one hand while balancing something long and wooden over her shoulder with the other. I got up carefully, my knees complaining. "Hey there, honey, what's that?" She marched straight onto the front lawn and jammed the stake into the ground, tamping the dirt around it with the heel of her shoe. A laminated sign swung from the top bar, catching the morning light. "Riverfront Mini Hotel. Coming soon. Book your stay now." My mouth went dry. "Maggie," I said slowly, "what is that?" She turned to me, face glowing with excitement. "This, Dad, is the new mini hotel on the riverfront." I stared at her, then at the sign, then back again. The river whispered behind us, the same steady sound that had soothed Mary and me for 15 years. "What are you talking about?" "Well, Dad, you don't mind if I rent out your house room by room, right?" She gestured around like a realtor on television. "I'm going to turn it into a mini hotel. Just imagine it. Weekend couples from the city, fishing tourists, Instagram photos with that view." She pointed toward the water as if I'd never seen it before. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice already tightening. "And where am I supposed to go?" Her smile slipped for just a second. "Oh, Daddy, why do you need such a big house all to yourself? You probably haven't even been in half of these rooms since Mom died." She said it like a fact, like a verdict. "This way I can make some money," she added lightly. "And you'll have company around. You're always saying it's too quiet." I remembered a little girl in pigtails who used to run down to the river in rubber boots 3 sizes too big. That girl had cried when a fish died in her bucket and insisted on having funerals for beetles. I blinked, and somewhere along the way the city turned that soft-hearted child into a woman who saw this place as square footage. "Maggie," I said, feeling a slow anger begin to wake up in my chest. "You didn't even ask me. You just show up and plant a sign on your mother's lawn?" "Come on, Dad," she said, brushing invisible dust off her blazer. "Don't be dramatic. It's just business. The house is wasted like this. I ran the numbers. I can charge $200 a night per room in season, maybe more. That's real money." "I don't care about your numbers," I said. "This is the house where your mother and I were happy. Let me have my peace and quiet." She sighed, rolling her eyes in a way that made me feel suddenly 100 years old. You're being selfish. You know I'm drowning in debt. Student loans, credit cards, that stupid car payment. I thought you'd be glad I'm finally doing something instead of asking you for money." "You're not asking," I said quietly. "You're telling." Her jaw tightened. "Just let me earn a little, okay? We'll figure out the details later." "No," I said more firmly than I'd spoken in months. "No, Maggie, absolutely not." The word hung in the air between us. For a heartbeat, she just stared at me, stunned that her old, lonely father might still have a spine. Then her expression hardened into something sharp I didn't recognize. "You know what?" she snapped, kicking the steak with the toe of her shoe. "Fine. Be stubborn. Stay here in your museum and rot. But don't complain when I can't help you later." "Maggie!" She was already heading back to the car. "I came to talk like an adult," she called over her shoulder. "You want to act like a child? That's on you." The convertible roared, sending dust up in angry spirals as she jerked down the driveway. The sign shivered in the breeze, squeaking faintly on its chains. I stood on the porch until the sound of her engine faded into the trees. Then I walked down to the lawn, pulled up the sign, and laid it gently in the shed, face down. "It's okay," I told the empty air. "She'll cool off. She always does." I believed that for exactly 1 week. A friend of mine in the next state over bred German shepherds. After Mary died, the silence in the house started to feel like a living thing, heavy and watchful. I'd been thinking about getting a dog for months. When Frank called to say he had a litter ready, I finally said yes. "Come on, old man," he laughed over the phone. "You need something that depends on you again. Keeps a man honest." The drive was 3 hours each way. I turned off my phone halfway there, tired of spam calls and political messages, and spent the afternoon letting puppy claws scratch my arms raw until one particular pup climbed into my lap and fell asleep. He was warm and solid, a little patch of black and tan with ears too big for his head. When he snored, I felt something in my chest loosen for the first time in months. "I'll call you Duncan," I whispered. Mary always liked strong names. By the time I got back on the road, the sky had darkened to deep blue. Duncan curled on the blanket beside me, occasionally chewing my sleeve. I turned my phone back on at a gas station. It buzzed, thought about it, then died with a pathetic little whine. "Figures," I muttered. "We'll charge it at home." The closer we got, the more the world narrowed to the familiar bends in the road. The old sycamore at the corner, the rusted mailbox with the bullet hole, the smell of the river, damp and mineral, slipping through the vents. 2 miles out I saw light where there should have been darkness. It wasn't the warm yellow glow of a porch lamp. It was white and harsh, columns of it stabbing into the sky like searchlights. Music thumped faintly, wrong in the quiet woods. "Strange," I murmured. Duncan lifted his head, ears twitching. When I pulled up to my property, my hands went numb on the steering wheel. My house was gone. The weathered clapboard siding, the porch with its sagging steps and the swing Mary and I had painted together, the curtains she'd sewn from old tablecloths, the crooked chimney Duncan had never seen but already knew by the smell of home. All of it. Gone. In its place stood that mini hotel Maggie had talked about, except it wasn't coming soon. It was there. White siding, dark trim, too many windows staring out at the river. String lights crisscrossed the eaves. A gravel parking lot had swallowed my vegetable garden. Heavy glass doors gleamed where my front door had once creaked. A giant balloon arch straddled a cheap red carpet. Under it, holding a champagne flute and laughing with a group of strangers, stood my daughter. The argument that followed lasted an hour, maybe 2. Time stretched and twisted around harsh words. "How could you?" I shouted more than once. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she shouted back. "That old shack was going to collapse sooner or later. You saw the cracks in the foundation." I thought about the foundation I had poured with my own hands. We could have fixed it. "With what money, Dad?" She gestured around. "Look at this. This is the future. ecotourism, online booking, experiences. Where am I supposed to live? I asked, my voice raw. She hesitated just long enough for me to see she hadn't really thought about that. Not beyond a vague notion that I could be stored somewhere out of the way like old furniture. You can stay here, she said brightly. You can have one of the ground floor rooms. We'll call you the on-site host. Guests love that. They'll think it's charming. I don't want to live in a hotel, I said. I want my home. Dad, grow up. The kindness vanished from her tone. You're acting like a child. The house is legally mine anyway, remember? You signed it over to me years ago, for tax reasons. You said it yourself. I remembered. I remembered the way Mary had smiled when we left the lawyer's office. This way there's no messy will, she'd said. Maggie will be taken care of when we're gone. I'd thought I was protecting my daughter. Instead, I'd signed the death warrant on my own piece. Legally yours, I repeated now. The words tasted like rust. Exactly, and I'm finally doing something smart with it. She took my arm, voice softening. Come on, Dad, sleep on it. You can take the room at the end of the hall for a few nights, then we'll figure something out. Maybe we can change the upstairs office into a little apartment for you. It'll be fun. Fun. Living like a permanent guest in the ruins of my own life. Behind us, Duncan barked from the truck, unsettled by the shouting and the unfamiliar smells. A couple in matching fleece jackets glanced our way and whispered. No, I said. My throat hurt, but the word came out steady. I won't stay here. Not tonight. Fine, Maggie snapped, dropping my arm. Go throw a tantrum somewhere else, but don't you dare try to sabotage this for me. I have contracts, investors, loans. I can't afford mistakes. Loans? I repeated. She rolled her eyes. Relax, it's all under control. It was not under control, not at all. I didn't know that yet, but I would. With nowhere else to go, I drove to a cheap motel on the highway. Duncan paced the thin carpet, confused by the smell of strangers and bleach. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my empty hands. In one day I'd gone from homeowner to man with a dog and a truck and nothing else. Well, not nothing. I still had knowledge. I knew every stone in that river, every hollow in that forest, every story whispered by teenagers around campfires on summer nights. Maggie had left for the city at 18 and never looked back. She knew spreadsheets and apps. She did not know this place. Sleep came in ragged pieces that night, full of Mary's voice and the sound of hammers. When dawn finally broke, gray through the thin curtains, I sat up with a clarity I hadn't felt since before the hospital called about my wife. I couldn't call the police. The deed was in Maggie's name. I couldn't sue her without dragging Mary's memory through court and losing anyway. But my daughter wanted to turn my river into a business, and I knew how to destroy a bad business without breaking a single law. It began, as most of my plans do, with a list. I bought a stiff bound notebook at the hardware store on my way back to the motel. While Duncan chewed the corner off the paper bag, I sat at the tiny desk and wrote across the first page. Ways to ruin a mini hotel without going to jail. Under that, I started listing everything I knew. Location, remote, between river and forest, 10 miles from nearest town. No passing traffic. All guests will come by deliberate choice. Booking. Online reviews, crucial. Word of mouth, even more crucial. Local legends. The Drowned Bride. Mary used to laugh at that one. The River Children. The Night Whistler in the Pines. The Witch of Miller's Bend. My Assets. Detailed knowledge of land. Old photos, maps, news clippings about floods. A loyal, energetic German Shepherd puppy. 2 or 3 friends in town who still answer my calls. Time. As I wrote, the tremor in my hands faded. My breathing slowed. The helplessness of the night before drained away, replaced by something tighter and colder. I had spent my life as a civil engineer, the kind of man who built bridges and roads other people took for granted. Planning was second nature. I knew how to calculate load, how to anticipate stress. My daughter had built a fragile structure on rotten foundations. All I needed to do was apply pressure in exactly the right places. The first pressure point was information. That afternoon, I drove into town and parked outside the only bar still open on a Tuesday. The Riverbend was a fading rectangle of brick with a neon beer sign that had buzzed since the 80s. Inside, the air smelled of fried food and old stories. Cody was behind the bar, as he had been for as long as I'd known him. He'd added weight around the middle and lost most of his hair, but his eyes were still sharp. "Jim," he said, surprised, wiping his hands on a rag. "Haven't seen you in months. You okay?" "Mary died," I said. The words still scraped on the way out. His face softened. "I heard. I'm sorry, old man." "Thanks." I took a seat, Duncan curling up dutifully at my feet. "Listen, Cody, I need a favor." "Name it." "You heard about the new hotel on the river?" He snorted. "That box they slapped up where your place was? Hard to miss. Contractors drank half my inventory." "What are people saying?" He shrugged. "Some folks are excited. Jobs, tourists, all that. Others say it's a shame. You know how it goes." "I need people to say something else," I said quietly. "I need them to say it's cursed." He laughed, then saw my face and stopped. "You serious?" "Very. I'm not asking you to lie. Just remind folks of the stories. Embellish a little. You always had a good imagination." He poured me a coffee without asking. "Jim, what exactly are you planning?" I told him. Not everything, not the full list, but enough. By the time I finished, Cody leaned on the bar, elbows planted. "You're going to haunt your own property." "Not mine anymore," I said. "That's the point." He shook his head slowly, a reluctant smile tugging at his mouth. "You know this is crazy." "Is it illegal?" "Probably not." "Then it's not crazy. It's strategy." He chuckled, then grew serious. "You sure this is what you want, Jim? She's your kid. Maybe she'll come around." "She demolished the house her mother died in," I said. "And she did it while I was out buying a dog so I wouldn't be alone. She wants money, not a father." Cody studied my face, then nodded once. "Okay, I'll start talking. I know a guy runs a fishing podcast too. Loves a good ghost story." Pressure point number 2. Experience. The first guest I scared off left after one night. I watched them arrive from the cover of the trees, my back pressed against the rough bark of an old pine. Duncan sat beside me, ears pricked, head tilted as if watching a show. The couple were mid-30s maybe, expensive hiking gear, shiny camera around the man's neck. They checked in through the back patio door, laughing at something Maggie said. My daughter wore her professional smile, all teeth and confidence, gesturing at the view. When it got dark, I went to work. The river had a voice if you knew how to listen. There was a certain bend upstream where the water narrowed and the current hissed more sharply. A fallen log created a hollow under the surface. Children in town had always said if you listened there at night, you could hear crying. I'd discovered something else years ago. If you stretched fishing line between two trees and tied an old metal wind chime just right, the river's current and the night breeze would make it sing at odd intervals. Not the pleasant tinkling sound you got on a porch. Low, broken notes, almost like words. That night, I adjusted the strings until the notes sounded like laughter. Then I put on the old waterproof jacket Mary used to wear mushroom hunting, hood up, and walked slowly through the shallows where the moonlight hit the water just so. Duncan trotted beside me, thoroughly unimpressed, occasionally snapping at fireflies. Inside the hotel, lights flickered in a few windows. Around 10, the couple's room went dark. I waited. The first scream came at 11:23 p.m. It wasn't a horror movie shriek, just a sharp burst of fear that cut across the river. The chime rattled in answer, the echo warped by distance. Voices followed, muffled and frantic. A flashlight beam swung wildly, hitting the tree line where I stood. I stepped just enough out of cover that my silhouette could be seen for a second. The beam hit me, then slid away as the person holding it jerked back. "Did you see that?" a woman's voice demanded. "By the water. There was someone there." "It's just the trees, honey," the man answered, his tone not nearly as calm as he wanted it to be. "Go back inside." The chime laughed again. The next morning their car was gone before sunrise. Their review, which Cody showed me on his phone 2 days later, mentioned unsettling noises and a strange figure by the river. Manager was dismissive, it read, left after one night, would not recommend for a relaxing stay. 3 stars, not bad, not good either, enough to plant a seed. Maggie noticed. She called me 3 days later. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "What are you doing?" she demanded, skipping hello. "I saw you by the river last night. Guess mentioned a creepy old man hanging around." "It's a free country," I said mildly. "That's still public land, unless you bought the river too." "You're scaring people off." "Am I?" I asked. "Maybe they're scared of something else. A new building where an old one vanished, perhaps." She hissed something under her breath. "Just stay away from the property, Dad. This is my livelihood." "You made that clear," I said. "Good luck, honey." I hung up before she could respond. My hands shook a little, but not from fear, from adrenaline. The second wave of guests came that weekend. This time, I was ready. I'd spent my remaining savings on a few key items: a battery-powered speaker, a digital recorder, 2 cheap smoke machines from a party store, and a roll of reflective tape. Cody thought I was having a breakdown. I told him I was redecorating. During the day, I kept my distance. Duncan and I walked along the far side of the river, the side where the land still felt like mine, and watched trucks pull in. Families, couples, a fishing tour group that had no idea they'd booked an adventure. At dusk, I moved through the forest, marking certain trunks with reflective tape at eye level, angled just so. Under a full moon, those marks would catch light like staring eyes. At 9, I set the speaker under the boardwalk Maggie had built along the riverbank for her sunset photo sessions. I'd spent the previous night in my motel room recording my own voice in a low whisper, looping phrases from the old stories. Get out. Not safe. Give it back. Played backwards, the words were just strange enough to raise the hair on your neck without being clear. I timed everything. First came the chimes. Then, as people stepped onto the boardwalk, their phone flashlights bouncing off the water, the speaker began to murmur. The smoke machines, hidden under the planks at either end, released thin tendrils of mist that rose between the boards, catching the light. From the forest edge, the reflective tape eyes watched. Fear is a funny thing. Give it a shape, a name, a story, and it grows. Within a week, people were telling each other about the voices in the reeds and the faces in the trees. Cody's podcast friend did an episode about haunted river lodges. A local teenager posted a shaky video of the chimes and mist on social media, captioned, "We're all gonna die at this cursed Airbnb, LOL." The clip got more views than Maggie's official advertising. She called again. "This isn't funny," she snapped. "I had 3 cancellations today. Refunds, Dad. I can't afford this." "Maybe your investors can help," I suggested. "You said you had backers." There was a pause. "They're not that kind of investors." It was the way she said it that made something cold trickle down my spine. "What kind are they?" I asked. She didn't answer. "Just stop coming around at night, okay? If you want to visit, come during the day, like a normal person. I'll even comp you lunch at the cafe." "I don't want your cafe," I said. "I want my house." "Too late," she shot back, and hung up. That should have been the end of it. A petty, localized war between a stubborn old man and his ambitious daughter. Haunted marketing versus desperate booking. But life, like the river, always has undercurrents you don't see at first glance. The second hook in this story arrived one hot afternoon when a black SUV I didn't recognize pulled into the motel parking lot and stopped beside my truck. Two men got out. They weren't tourists. They weren't from town. I could tell by the shoes, polished, expensive. By the way they looked around, not at the trees or sky, but at exits, angles, distance. "Mr. Harris?" the taller one asked, approaching my open motel door. He was in his 40s maybe, with a tan that didn't come from the river and a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "I'm Jim," I said, staying seated on the edge of the bed. Duncan stood up, fur bristling, a low growl in his chest. "That's close enough," I added. The shorter man held up both hands. "No problems, Mr. Harris. We just want to talk. Name's Leo. This is Marco." I said nothing. "You have a very determined daughter," Leo continued. "Ambitious. That's admirable. Ambition needs support. People like us." He smiled again. "We heard there's been trouble at the property." "What kind of trouble?" I asked. "Guests leaving, strange stories, bad reviews, you know. Trouble." So, Leo said, leaning against the doorframe, "Maggie borrowed significant funds to build that place. Private money, quick approvals, no questions asked. In return, we expect our investment to be treated with respect." "Your investment," I repeated. "That's what you call it." He shrugged. "You know how it is, Mr. Harris? Sometimes the bank says no. Sometimes people come to us instead. We help them. They help us. Everyone wins." "And if they don't help you?" I asked quietly. His smile faded a fraction. "Then we find out why, and we fix it." "You think I'm the problem?" "I think," Leo said, his voice still pleasant, "that a father who cares about his daughter wouldn't want her in a situation where she can't make her payments." "And I think," I replied, "that a father who cares about his daughter wouldn't want her in business with people who talk about fixing problems in motel parking lots." Marco shifted his weight, impatience flickering across his face. "Oh man, we're trying to be respectful here." Duncan growled louder. Leo eyed the dog, then looked back at me. "We're not asking you to disappear, Mr. Harris. Just stop scaring customers. Let the girl work. We get paid. You get a grateful daughter. Everybody sleeps better." "For how long?" I asked. "Until you decide you want the land too? Until she misses one payment?" Leo's gaze sharpened. "You say that like you know something." "I know you wouldn't be here if everything was fine," I said. "And I know my daughter didn't build that place cash in hand. She never had that kind of money. If she owes you, that's between you and her." "It becomes between us and you," Marco said quietly, "when you interfere." I met his eyes. "You're trespassing on my time, gentlemen. Conversation's over." Leo straightened. For a second, the charming mask slipped. "You're a stubborn man, Mr. Harris." "I am," I agreed. "Ask my wife. Or you would, if she were still alive." He considered me, then nodded once as if filing something away. "We'll be in touch." They left without another word. Dust rose behind their SUV, hanging in the air long after they turned onto the main road. I sat very still for a long time, Duncan's head on my knee. That was the moment I understood the full stakes of what I was doing. I thought I was just ruining my daughter's rating average. I didn't realize yet that every empty room pushed her closer to the men she'd borrowed money from, men who didn't like to lose. For the first time since I started my little haunting campaign, I asked myself if I'd gone too far. Then I remembered the blank space where Mary's house had stood. The sound of Maggie's voice saying, "Why do you need such a big place all to yourself?" The banner where my porch used to be. I opened the notebook to a clean page. "New factors," I wrote. "Maggie owes money to dangerous people. They blame me for her inability to pay. If I stop now, she still might lose everything. and I'll have lost my only leverage. Then underneath, objective adjustment, not just ruin business. Protect land, protect myself, give Maggie a choice she can't wriggle out of. That meant I needed more than ghost stories. I needed the law. I spent the next week in offices instead of forests. First, the county clerk's office, where a tired woman named Cheryl let me read public records until my eyes blurred. I copied down every permit Maggie had pulled. Demolition, new construction, commercial use. Then I went to see an old acquaintance, Alan Price, who had once worked under me on a highway project and now called himself an environmental compliance consultant. "Jim," he said, standing up to shake my hand. "Heard about Mary. I'm sorry." "Thanks," I said. "Tell me something, Alan. You still know your way around wetlands regulations?" He smiled faintly. "Better than I know my wife's schedule." I laid out what I knew. The location, the construction timeline, the heavy equipment that had gone in and out at all hours. Alan listened, fingers steepled. When I finished, he whistled softly. "She put that septic system that close to the river?" "Closer," I said. "I saw them digging near the old willow. It floods every spring." He shook his head. "That's a violation waiting to happen. Runoff, contamination, the whole mess, if she didn't file the right environmental impact assessments." "She didn't," I said. "I checked. There's a box on the form that says no significant environmental impact. She ticked it." Alan's eyes narrowed. "You sure you want to go down this road, Jim? That's your kid." "She tore down my home without asking," I said, "and she's in bed with men who think threats are a negotiation tactic. I'm done pretending she's still the kid who cried over dead fish. She made herself a businesswoman. I'll treat her like one." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, here's what we do." Within 2 weeks, there was an anonymous complaint filed with the state environmental agency, another with the health department about possible sewage leaks, a third with the fire marshal about occupancy limits and emergency exits. I didn't sign my name to any of them. I didn't have to. The law doesn't care who points at the problem, only that the problem exists. While the bureaucratic wheels started turning, I kept up the hauntings, but I changed their flavor. Less spectacle, more subtle. Lights flickering at odd times. Doors found open that had been locked a moment before. The sound of a woman singing, faint and off-key, drifting down the hallway at 3 a.m. Another carefully timed recording, this one of Mary humming in the kitchen, filtered and distorted. Guests started mentioning the woman in white in reviews. Someone claimed to have seen wet footprints on the stairs, leading nowhere. Another swore they'd heard children laughing by the river when no kids were booked that weekend. A local true crime blogger picked up the stories and did a dramatic video about the drowned bride of Miller's Bend. She parked right across from the hotel sign, hair blowing in the wind, telling a story about a bride who had died on her wedding day when her carriage plunged into the flood-swollen river. It was nonsense. No such bride had ever existed. But it sounded good. That's all stories really need to survive. Maggie's bookings dipped, then plummeted. She came to see me in person after that. I was sitting at the motel's flimsy little table, sorting through old photos of the house when there was a sharp knock. Duncan barked once, then padded to the door, sniffing. I opened it to find my daughter on the threshold. She looked different. The blazer was there, but it hung looser. There were bruised shadows under her eyes. Her hair, always so carefully styled, was pulled back in a fraying knot. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside without answering. She sat on the edge of the bed, spine straight, hands clenched in her lap. For a moment, she looked like the teenage girl who had once sat on that same bed when we stayed in this same motel during a storm back when we first bought the house and the roof still leaked. "Dad," she said, "I need you to stop." "Stop what?" I asked. "Everything." She spread her hands. "The theatrics. The ghost stuff. I know it's you. Who else would know that much about the river? I'm just an old man walking his dog, I said. The rest is the wind. Her eyes flashed. Don't do that. Don't play dumb. You're smarter than that, and we both know it. I said nothing. She exhaled, shoulders sagging. I'm in trouble. I know, I said quietly. You don't, she insisted. These guys, they're not like a bank, Dad. Leo and Marco, I've met them, I interrupted. They introduced themselves. Her face went pale. What did they say? That they want their money. That they think I'm in the way. She swallowed hard. The construction cost more than I thought. The contractor changed the quote halfway through. The permits, the septic system, the furnishings, it all added up. The bank said no to a second mortgage. I was out of options. You could have sold the car, I said. Her jaw clenched. It's leased. Of course it is. I thought if I could just get through the first season, she rushed on, I'd be able to refinance. The reviews would be great, occupancy high. We'd be in travel blogs. And instead, I said, you've got half-empty rooms and ghost stories. Your ghost stories, she accused. My river, I replied. We stared at each other. Dad, they're giving me 2 months, she whispered. 2 months to catch up on payments. If I don't know. They hinted about taking the property, about making an example. Her voice broke. I'm scared. For a moment, I almost broke. This was my child. The girl whose nightmares I chased away with nightlight monsters and silly voices. The girl who sat on my shoulders at fireworks and fell asleep in the truck on the way home, drooling onto my collar. But that girl had grown into this woman, who had bulldozed her mother's kitchen while I was out buying a dog. You made choices, I said finally. Adult choices, adult debts. So you're just going to let them ruin me? She asked, eyes blazing. You'd rather destroy my business than help me save it? I didn't destroy your business, I said. You built it on a grave without asking who was buried there. She flinched. It's just a house. It was my life, I said. We sat in silence. What if, she said slowly, what if I sign half the business back over to you? You could be my partner. We could work together instead of against each other. You'd have a room, a say in decisions. We could rebrand. Jim's River Retreat. People love old guys with stories. It was a tempting picture. Too tempting. I could see Mary in it, sitting on the deck with a mug of tea, listening to guests tell about their day. But Mary wasn't here. The house wasn't there. The men in the SUV were. And Maggie wasn't offering partnership out of love. You're not offering me a place in your life, I said. You're offering me as collateral. That's not fair, she whispered. No, I agreed. It's not. She stared at her hands. What do you want then? For me to fail? To have them take everything? I want, I said slowly, for the river to be quiet again. For that patch of land to stop being a bargaining chip. I want you to learn the difference between using people and loving them. I don't. You want my help? I interrupted. Here are my conditions. She looked up, wary. I'm listening. First, I said, you get rid of Leo and Marco. You refinance legitimately, or you don't refinance at all. She laughed bitterly. You think it's that easy? Thanks for the money. Please don't kill me. Bye. Second, I continued, ignoring her, you sell the building. Her mouth fell open. Sell? To who? For what? To the county, I said. Or a conservation trust. Or anyone who will agree to tear it down and restore the land. I've already talked to Alan. There's interest in turning that part of the river into a protected corridor. Grants, funding, the whole deal. You've been planning this, she breathed. Yes, I said. And I'll be left with what? she demanded. Nothing? Just my debts? You'll be left alive, I said. And free from those men. That's more than I can say for some people who get into bed with them. She stood abruptly. You'd really rather see that place demolished than see me succeed. I met her gaze. You didn't leave me much to choose from. She stared at me for a long, long time. Then she walked to the door, hand on the knob. You know what, Dad? She said without looking back. Maybe Leo was right. Maybe you are the problem. Maybe, I said. But I'm the problem who knows the sheriff, the county inspector, and half the environmental board. Think about that before you decide who to stand next to when they show up. She left. 3 days later, the first inspector arrived. They came in a convoy over the next week. White pickup trucks with official seals, sedans with state plates. A fire marshal in a uniform crisp enough to cut paper. They walked the property with clipboards and measuring tapes, took water samples by the river, examined electrical panels and exit doors. I watched from the tree line, Duncan at my side. Maggie trailed the officials, her smile brittle, hands fluttering as she tried to charm and distract. It didn't work. The septic field was too close to the floodplain. The retaining wall by the river wasn't up to code. The kitchen ventilation system didn't meet commercial standards. One of the fire exits had been partially blocked with a decorative cabinet full of brochures. Each violation by itself might have been fixable. Together they painted a picture of someone who had cut corners to get open fast. When the first cease and desist order was posted on the glass door, temporary closure pending remediation, my knees almost buckled. Not from joy, from the weight of what I'd done. Cody called that night. You won, he said without preamble. Nobody won, I replied, but something ended. Those guys, Leo and Marco, they're mad as hell, he warned. They were in here earlier, yelling about inspections and sabotage. Did they say what they'd do? I asked. Nothing specific, but they asked around. Wanted to know who you talk to. Who helps you? Be careful, Jim. I will, I said. I didn't sleep much that night. Every car passing on the highway made me tense. Every bark from Duncan sent my hand toward the baseball bat I kept beside the bed. The attack, when it came, wasn't what I'd expected. It wasn't fire or broken windows. It wasn't a beating in a dark parking lot. It was a summons. A week after the closure, I received an official letter from a lawyer in the city. It accused me of tortious interference with a business and defamation. It threatened to sue me for damages equal to the lost revenue of the mini hotel. Maggie's name was on the letterhead, along with those of 3 silent partners. Leo and Marco had found a way to weaponize the law. I took the letter to Alan, who took it to a friend in town, a small-town attorney named June Carter who'd been fighting bullies since grade school. She read it, then snorted. They have no case. They're going to try anyway, I said. Let them, she replied. Discovery works both ways. It was June who came up with the final twist. At our first proper meeting, she spread her notes across her desk. We can show that your complaints to the agencies were well-founded, she said. That protects you from defamation. As for interference, if the business is illegal or dangerous, there's no right to profit from it. And Leo? I asked. She smiled thinly. People like him like to stay in the shadows. A public court case with state agencies testifying won't appeal. We may not need to get that far. How so? Pressure, she said simply. The same way they tried to pressure you, we pressure them. Legally. We make it clear that any attempt to pursue this suit will drag their funding, their contracts, their other projects into the light. And Maggie? I asked quietly. That's up to you, she said. But I'll tell you this, Jim. Sometimes the only way people like her learn is when they finally hit the ground and realize there's no one left to catch them. The standoff lasted exactly 10 days. On the 11th, Leo and Marco disappeared. Not literally. They were still in the world, still haunting other people's lives. But they pulled out of the mini hotel. They sold their stake, at a discount, June said with satisfaction, to a local conservation trust. Maggie's shares were bought as part of the deal. Enough to clear her debt, not enough to leave her rich. Their condition was simple. The building had to go. I was invited to the demolition. I almost didn't go. It felt ghoulish, watching something be destroyed, even if I wanted it gone. But in the end, I stood on the far side of the river, Duncan at my feet, watching as the excavator's steel claw bit into the facade. Every crash felt like an exorcism. Glass shattered, walls crumpled, the string lights collapsed in a tangled heap, their little bulbs popping uselessly in the debris. The red carpet, filthy with months of footsteps, disappeared under dust. When the last wall fell, a strange silence settled over the bend. I imagined I could hear Mary sigh. Over the next year, the Conservation Trust did what they'd promised. They cleared the rubble, removed the septic field, replanted native grasses along the riverbank. They built a small, simple boardwalk for bird watchers, with a sign that read, Harris River Preserve in honor of Mary and Jim. Harris for their stewardship of this land. When they asked if they could include my name, I hesitated. Please, the director said softly. It's your home, even if the house is gone. Home. The word didn't hurt as much as it once had. In the end, I agreed. They cleared a little patch of land at the edge of the preserve for me. Nothing fancy, just enough space for a modest cabin, built by volunteers and funded by a grant. June helped with the paperwork. Alan supervised the foundation. I hammered a few nails myself, just to feel the weight of the hammer in my hand again. I moved in on the first day of spring. The cabin was small, 1 story, with a wide porch and big windows looking over the water. Duncan raced around the place, sniffing every corner, finally flopping down on the porch with a sigh of contentment. I stood by the railing, coffee mug in hand, listening to the river. It sounded different now, lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from its shoulders as well. I had been living there a month when Maggie finally came. I saw her car at the edge of the preserve, where visitors had to park. She walked the path slowly, hands shoved into the pockets of a plain jacket I'd never seen before. No heels, no blazer, sneakers, jeans, her hair in a simple ponytail. She stopped halfway up the cabin steps looking at the sign with our names. Hi, Dad, she said. Hey, Maggie, I replied. Duncan trotted over, tail wagging cautiously. She scratched his ears, eyes shining. He got big. They do that, I said. We stood in silence for a moment, listening to the river. I saw the videos, she said finally, of the demolition, of the preserve. She swallowed. They sent me the papers from the trust, the sale, the donation in Mom's name. I didn't know you could do something like that. Most people don't know what old men can do when you push them, I said. She gave a small, pained laugh. Apparently. How are you? I asked. The question was simple, but it held whole volumes. She stared out over the water. I'm working at a hotel, she said. My eyebrows rose. A real one, she added quickly. In town, front desk. I check people in and out, deal with complaints, clean up messes. How's that going? Hard, she admitted. But honest. She hesitated. I had to sell the car. Probably for the best, I said. She nodded. I paid off Leo and Marco with the trust money. June helped. She said you pulled some strings. I made some phone calls, I said. I owe you, she said quietly. You owe yourself, I replied. You were the one who signed the papers. You accepted the terms. You live with the consequences. She flinched. Do you hate me? The question was so small I almost missed it. I thought of the sign on the lawn, the mini hotel, the months of fear and planning, the feeling of triumph when the building fell, the empty ache afterward. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't trust you. Not yet. She nodded, eyes wet. That's fair. I loved your mother, I added. I love you. Those things are true. But love doesn't mean letting someone walk all over you. I know that now, she whispered. We listened to the water again. A heron lifted from the reeds, beating its wings slowly toward the sky. Can I come by sometimes? She asked. Not to stay, just to visit. Bring you groceries, walk the dog. I have groceries, I said, and 2 feet. She laughed through her tears. I know, I want to try again, to be your daughter, not your investor, not your problem, just your daughter. Visiting hours are whenever you show up, I said. But if you start talking about turning this cabin into a spa retreat, I'll let Duncan chase you into the river. She smiled, a real smile this time, crooked and familiar. Deal. She took a step closer, then paused, waiting. I opened my arms. She came into them like she was still 10 years old, tucking her head under my chin. Her shoulders shook as she cried. I'm sorry, she whispered into my shirt. For the house, for the debt, for everything. I know, I said, resting my chin on her hair. I am too. For a long time we just stood there, holding on, the river talking softly around us. Later, after she left, Duncan and I sat on the porch as the sun went down. The sky turned the color of old embers. The water caught the light and threw it back in ripples. I thought about revenge, about justice, about the fragile line between them. I had taken back my peace. I had protected the land Mary loved. I had broken my daughter's delusions without breaking her. And I had learned, at 72, that a man isn't truly powerless as long as he still knows how to listen, to rivers, to stories, to his own conscience. The sound of the river, a cup of coffee, a blanket, and the anticipation of sunrise. That's how I spend every morning now in my little cabin between the river and the forest. Sometimes when the mist is just right and the wind hits the old chimes I left hanging upstream, I hear laughter drifting over the water. Not ghostly, not threatening. Mary's laughter, Maggie's, my own. The mini hotel is gone. The land is quiet. But the story of what happened there still travels, whispered by campers and bartenders and late-night radio hosts who love a good scare. They never get it quite right, of course. They talk about curses and drowned brides and a vengeful spirit that ruined a greedy woman's dream. They never mention the old man on the porch, sipping his coffee. Who knows the truth? It wasn't a curse that destroyed that hotel. It was a father who finally decided his peace and dignity were worth fighting for, and who knew his river well enough to make the fight look like a haunting.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.